Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. So I was checking my statistics and it turns out that only one of you aren't subscribed. So if you don't want to be that one person, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. And our first story of the day is by Admiral Unicorn. If I ask too many questions, it'll raise red flags. Oh, I have to? Okay then. I recently received a promotion within my company to work on the compliance team. My first task was to look at the projects that had recently been started and ensure they were compliant with local laws. The first project I came across, I realized had disregarded multiple local laws of that country. Like a good little worker, I took this information to the project lead with some recommendations on how we can fix it easily and still have the project running smoothly. She was less than pleased. Not with the fact that the laws were being broken, but with me for attempting to complicate the process. She told me that unless I had confirmation from the police and local government that it wasn't allowed, she didn't care. I explained to her that if we start asking these questions, it could raise red flags and cause a lot of issues if someone decided to investigate. Apparently I was being ridiculous and didn't know what I was talking about. She told me that unless I came back with proof that she didn't want to hear about it. Okay then, you want proof? I'll go kick that hornet's nest and get you some proof. I went away and began contacting those involved. Now I tried so hard, really no sarcasm there, to make my questions as innocuous as physically possible, attempting to look more curious than anything else, until one person said, "Why are you asking these questions? We were told about this previously and that you would do X. If this is what you're doing, then these questions are strange." Great. I stated that we were curious, looking at how we can adapt the process, but I could tell, even over email, that they weren't convinced. I had enough info to take to the project lead, not as much as I would like, but enough. When I took this to her, she looked at it, said, and told me she would look into it. I explained the suspicion, but I got hit with the word ridiculous again. I had done what she asked. I was done. Fast forward a few weeks, I get a call telling me to join a Zoom meeting with the CEO, the project lead, and the head of HR. I joined and she threw me under the bus. Apparently it was my fault that the local government was up our butts as I hadn't vetted the project properly and had tipped the government off rather than fix it. No idea what she was thinking, as all I had to do was show the emails where I explained that asking about it was a bad idea and my emails going back and forth with the authority. The CEO went quiet and then thanked me and asked me to disconnect. Spent a couple of days. Heck knows what happened, but I know all of her projects got reassigned and I haven't heard from her at all. I've also been asked to implement my plans and liaise with the authorities to ensure everything is as it should be. Win-win to be honest, because she sucked. So at this point, if somebody asks you to do something that's very clearly probably not a good idea, would you demand that you get that request in writing, whether an email or an actual letter? Let me know in the comments down below. And our next story is by Koldo. If you won't let us sleep, you're not going to either. This happened to me and my family, wife and 2 kids ages 6 and 7, a few weeks ago on a cruise to Italy. We had no problems for a few days on the cruise. We had balcony room, relevant later, and on the 3rd day we got new neighbors. 2 old ladies, somewhere around 60 to 70 years old, so I thought nothing of it. On their first day at 12 a.m. in the morning, they come on their balcony drunk and start talking so loud, almost shouting. We had our balcony open to enjoy the sea, so of course we all awoke from the noise. I asked them then to be quiet and instantly got shot down saying, "Close your balcony then." We called the reception and informed them of this and they said that they would send someone to talk to them. After 30 minutes and nothing happening, I went down to the reception with my wife and talked with reception and pressured them a bit more. They said they can't do anything and they can't force them out of the room and can only ask them to be quiet. Fuming, we went back to our room and closed the balcony to sleep. Day 1 end. The next day, I was dreading that the idiots would again start their screaming match, and I was correct. At 2 a.m., they came on the balcony, and this time my wife, who is normally very timid and patient, started shouting at them to be quiet. The old ladies responded with, "Why are you so angry? You're crazy," which infuriated my wife even more. We talked and also went to reception, and they said they couldn't do crap, can't force them out of the room, and that we can spend the night somewhere else and can move us to another room in the morning. We spent the night at another room because I wanted my children to sleep, so we had to carry both of them in the middle of the night to another room. But I didn't want to move to another room because A, why the heck are we the ones to move when we haven't done anything wrong? And B, my parents were also on the cruise and on the same level. Because of all the adrenaline, I couldn't sleep all night, and suddenly I had a stroke of pure genius. If the reception can't force them out of their room, that means they can't force us out of our room too. That's when I went back to our room, hammered on their door to give them a chance to keep what was coming civil, and when they didn't open their door, I got a snorkel and started hammering on their balcony glass. This is somewhere around 7 a.m. and at 3 a.m. as we carried the kids to another room, they were still awake, so they had max 4 hours of sleep. I'll spare you the small details, but I spent 2 hours knocking on the glass, which made the loudest noise, with intervals so they wouldn't get used to the noise. They came twice outside to grab my snorkel and videotaped me, all the while I said, "Come out, I want to talk." During all this, they must have called reception countless times because during the 2 hours, I once had a card on my room door to call the reception. At the end, the manager from the customer service came herself and talked with me, where I patiently told my side of the story. The old cows still refused to come out of their room and talk like adults, and that reception couldn't do anything and that I just wanted to talk. The old cows used all the excuses possible. "We're old, we can't move, I'm scared of that deranged man," which they meant me and my weapon. But in the end, they had to move because I said many times as their room door opened that if we won't sleep, they definitely won't. So all in all, reception can't do anything, and I had the savage pleasure to wake them up and kick them out of their room. I'm really quite confused as to why they wouldn't do anything about these people that are being absolutely disruptive at midnight, 2 a.m. Sorry, buddy, our hands are tied. It's like, well, what do you mean these people are being disruptive on a cruise? You can't do anything about that? This next story is by Fatford, How I Got Out of an Apartment's Lease. My friend had lived in his apartment complex for a few years, and his fiancée and him were in the market of buying a house. Well, the time came and an opportunity came, and they put an offer on a house. They still had 6 months on their lease and asked the management team what their options were. Management told them they would have to pay a month's rent to break the lease. He agreed and assumed it would be on his final statement the following month. The final statement comes, and it's for the remainder of the lease, $10,000 plus. He told them what he was told, and of course, that isn't their policy, so they aren't sure why he would have been told that, and he was on the hook for the remainder of the lease. He remembered seeing advertisements from his community about a 30-day grace period of backing out of a new rental agreement prior to actually moving in and just securing your spot. He then asked if the unit got rented out before the end of his old lease if he would still be on the hook. They told him once it's rented out, they'll release the charges, and he'll only be on the hook for 1 month of rent. He then asked them for an application and applied to rent the exact same unit, waited for the charge to drop from his balance, and canceled his application. I know you agreed to it and it's a contract, but I think it's more than scummy if somebody pays a month's rent upfront when they're not even going to live there to begin with, and still expect them to pay for an X amount of more months that they'll never have any association with. If everything's good, tidied up, in a situation where they can probably get their deposit back, they pay another month up front for you so you can spend a whole month looking for a new renter without any problem, then what's the issue? You're just being money grubbing after that. Our next story is by Sethius. Future Shop Factory resets every PC sent in for repair. I'd like to see them try. This happened about a decade ago when I was in university. Finals were coming up and the charging port on my laptop was giving out, and eventually the pin inside just completely broke. Luckily, I had a warranty and the usual repair time was less than a week, so I brought it in to be fixed. The guy at the counter explained to me that when they send the laptops away for repair, it's policy to wipe the hard drive and factory reset the computer, even if it's an issue like mine that has nothing to do with the OS. He was very nice and apologetic about it and agreed it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that those are the rules. Now, I had all of my notes and whatnot on there, and it would have been a disaster to lose all of that. I was mortified. But then a light bulb flicked on in my head, so I asked him if the laptop is required to have a hard drive in it to be repaired. He looked a little confused and said no, it's a mechanical issue, so they'll just fix the charging port, but again, it's policy to reset the computer. So I asked him if I could borrow a screwdriver, and I saw the light bulb flick on for him too. He had a huge grin while he went to get me a screwdriver, watched me take out the hard drive, and packed up the driveless computer to be repaired. When it came back, the charging port was fixed. I popped the hard drive back in, and all was well. I guess it's just policy covering their butts to wipe every computer, but if I had a mechanical issue and they said, yeah, by the way, we're gonna have to reset your entire computer, I would be livid. I would be upset. That's not okay. I'd definitely do what OP did and take the hard drive out. You can't reset what you don't have. You'll know if it works. You don't need the hard drive to find out. Our next story is by Jesus Christopher. Boss told me to stop asking questions, so I got a free break. A couple months ago, I got a new job at a kitchen with a boss I used to work with at a different company. I was given no training, not even a tour, so I had to figure out everything myself. He would constantly ask me to get things from the fridge or freezer, and me not knowing where things were would ask him. On the third day, he asked me to get some cucumbers to prep. I ask him where the cucumbers are in the fridge. He says, stop asking questions every time, just go find it. So I walk in the fridge and start looking. It isn't a massive fridge, but it's decently sized, dark, and an unorganized fridge. So I very meticulously and slowly check every part of the fridge until I found it. Took about 15 minutes. I did look the entire time, but I was in no rush and didn't want to miss it. I walked out of the fridge with the cucumber and my boss got all mad at me. I just replied with, you told me not to ask any more questions, and I didn't know where it was. He never got mad at me for asking a question again. I mean, this is the foundation of the word communication in a team environment. I think a huge pet peeve of mine is when you know somebody knows where something is or how to do something, so you ask them for assistance or some kind of pointer, and they brush you off. Either they're acting too busy or it's not worth their time. They say, oh, it's easy, go figure it out, or oh, go Google it, or anything like that. It's like, you could just take a minute and tell me, then we wouldn't have any problems. But okay, didn't want the help anyway. And our final story of the day is by NSN 242. Follow the flag code to the letter or you'll be fired. This happened about 10 years ago. I was struggling to figure out where my life was headed, what I wanted to do for a career, typical existential crisis stuff. I quit my job in the auto industry to feel out a few other career paths. I landed on security guard for an industrial complex in Middle Georgia. Big company in a small town. Pay was great. It was night shift, so it worked well with my non-existent sleep schedule, and it was an interesting change from what I've done most of my life. I loved it at first, until my boss changed his shift to overlap with mine in the morning. The dude was nuts. He had delusions of grandeur. He was a pathological liar. He frequently made up stories about being in the Navy SEALs with Steven Seagal. He was a quartermaster in the Navy for 4 years before he filed a disability claim after he knocked over a storage rack and it fell on him. One of his biggest pet peeves was this massive flag the company had. He printed out a few dozen copies of the flag code and told us to follow it to the letter, including putting it up and down every morning and night. Being night shift, I was almost always the person putting it up. One morning, there was extremely bad weather and, per the flag code, I didn't put the flag up. My boss came in around an hour later and ran his first rounds and noticed the flag wasn't displayed. I pointed at the specific section of the flag code that says not to display it during inclement weather, and he absolutely lost his mind. Berated me for 30 minutes. When it was time to clock out, he was still berating me, but I just stood up, clocked out, and left our little shack. The next day I show up and he tells me I'm suspended. Cool, I get a free night off. I come back 2 days later and the district manager's there with my boss. We sit down and chat. My boss keeps interrupting me and insulting me, so I told the district manager that I'm leaving if my boss doesn't let me speak. The district manager takes me elsewhere to finish the convo. I explain everything that happened, showed him the flag code, showed him the weather that morning, and then told him about my boss threatening to fire me if I didn't follow the flag code and then berating me for 30 minutes for following the flag code. The district manager and I walk into the security shack and sit down with my boss. The district manager proceeded to tell my boss that he's being fired for harassment and for violating his own flag code policy. I ultimately left a week later because I found a better job elsewhere, but it was one of the most satisfying things I've ever experienced. Listen, man, I served with Steven Seagal. There were harsh seas, cold nights, only the warmth between me and Steven Seagal to keep us sane on those waves. You better put that flag up. Yeah, maybe the guy was a little loony. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.